Hello and welcome to VOP this morning. I am Esther Nwachukwu. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu says he is working with the African Union to determine his next line of action in Gabon after soldiers seized power to pose on long-term President Ali Bongo. Plus, Chinese secretly mining titanium ore in Nigeria intercepted. Now, of course, the Rufai firm was shut down. These are the topics up for the conversation this morning. In the meantime, I would implore you to click, like, subscribe, share on our page. On YouTube, we're Voice of the People TV, and on other social media platforms, we are at VOP TV Live. First off, we'll be heading into what some of the national dailies are saying this morning. And I'll be starting with the Punch newspaper, where the major headline is Gabon, UN Commonwealth, others condemn coup. Tinubu warns of spread. That's on page 2. And the writer there says, power doesn't belong to barrels of guns. Contagious autocracy spreading in Africa. Tinubu. Bongo begs for freedom. Surgics put ex-leader under house arrest. Whisk away son. All of that details you see on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. This morning, we have NIN registration. FG records 48% of monthly target. You see that on page 19. Lagos Blue Line Rail begins operation September 4. Yippee, that's a good one. And that's on page 30 of the Punch newspaper. Kwankwaso still in NNPP, legal advisor says. You see that on page 33 of the Punch newspaper. Above the masthead, we have Norgay urges Tinubu to probe local government allocations diversion. You see that on page 18 of the Punch newspaper. Banks fire top 110 top executives, others over 80 billion naira fraud. Okay. Vandalized pipelines, marketers predict more fuel queues, and that's on page 20 of the Punch newspaper. Of course, when we look at what is, of course, across the national dailies right here on VAP this morning, we not do it alone. We actually have right here in the studio our in-house analyst, Cyril Abako. Cyril, good morning.
Good morning, Esther.
It is not surprising to see what is across the national dailies this morning, starting off with what is ongoing in Gabon. Some persons will say that this particular situation is not surprising. When the news broke out yesterday, a lot of has actually taken place. Developments have taken place. As of yesterday, apparently, the son has been whisked away. Gabon's president said he doesn't know where his wife is. He asked the international community to come to his aid to make a lot of noise, that he's being, indoor, no movement, no access to anything, and that he doesn't know what's going on out there. What's your take on that development?
I was personally disappointed by the statement the president put out. I'd have expected to hear him say something like, hours ago, I was declared president. The people of this country went to the ballot to express their will freely to choose me as leader, legally, constitutionally. But a handful of soldiers have thought to take the nation's destiny into their own hands, to take matters into their own hands. If my opponents didn't like the outcome of the election, they could have gone to court to seek redress, things like that. But that, and that what had happened yesterday was indeed a truncation of the people's will. He wasn't saying anything like that. He was cut off from reality. He was in a bubble. He appeared not to be in touch with what was going on. So not only did the soldiers isolate him, he himself was living isolated from the people. How was he president? How was he able to connect with them? How was he able to understand their feelings? And how was he really leading? If indeed this is the way he thinks, this is the way. And what noise is he talking about? When he himself, during the elections, cut off the internet, cut off all sorts of things people could have used to freely express themselves. If you cut it off during the election, why should they now install it because of you? So it means Gabon leaves because of you. The same thing happened in Turkey after President Tayyip Erdogan blocked Twitter. When the coup took place in Turkey, it was Twitter he used to rally the country. Of course, 2016 or 17. So these leaders ought to wake up and face the reality the way it is. He, as a person, he has been a purely France-Afrique president. He has been extremely francophile in his foreign policy enunciations and espousals. He has been extremely francophile. What that means basically that he's for France. And the point is, again, we've seen the trend happen in Mali, Niger, and all these places, and Burkina Faso and so on, Guinea-Bissau. None of the third world countries, none of the low powers can stand by themselves without the backing of a major power. So if the coupists have come to oust a friend of France
That means they have somebody backing them.
Are they going to now become new friends of France, or will they say, if France does not want to be friends with us because of Bongo, they would have to look for friends elsewhere? There's no question about it.
There is something I suspect would happen, which you mentioned yesterday. I don't want us to talk too much into this because that's what we're going to be talking about as our main conversation on VAP this morning. But some persons will say that all the Francophone countries seem to have woken up and realize that they no longer can be subservient to their colonial masters. But the question out there is, how will they cope with their social and political landscape, considering the fact that almost 90% of dependence is, on France? And when it comes to decision making, when it comes to their bilateral trade, some agreements that has to do with their natural resource, which is their main source of income, until France agrees to that and the percentage that France gets from it is done. Even look at their money, that's the CFA. So a lot hinges on a psychological chainsaw, with France. Yeah. So it's a huge responsibility that those cool leaders have actually taken upon themselves.
Let me say that arguably one of the most strategic Francophone countries is Cameroon.
Okay.
If Cameroon falls, then it will signal a major shift. That is, if it falls into the hands of these same COUPists who are not loyal to France, okay, then it will become a very, very serious matter. Because in principle, you would realize that it's happened in Niger, it's happened in Mali, Burkina Faso, and so on. Now, so there's got to be a pattern. There's going to be a pattern. It depends on who's going to take the leadership. Mm-hmm. Because if an old slave master was cruel, what makes you sure that the new slave master
will not be
cruel or even crueler? So what is he promising you? Does the slave master own you to set you free of his own volition? He does not. France was there as former colonizer, as whatever it was, running it, and then as neo-colonialist or neo-colonizer. So if you run to Russia, run to any other world power, China and so on, already China is speaking in favor of the junta in Gabon.
Exactly.
So so if that were the case, will these people be better off than the old master? I scarcely think so. I scarce think so. So the point is, somehow indigenously, these people must not be able to cut out an identity for themselves and say that when they took power, within 6 months, within 1 year, within 2 years, beyond transition, because if you transit, you don't automatically become free.
That's true.
I mean, the military comes in after 6 months or 1 year, do elections. Then what? Where does that go? Most likely, you're going to either pick a big businessman who has business interests in America, Russia, France, or China, or you pick an old politician from the old guard. So one way or the other, you may. I mean, it's dicey.
It's dicey.
But they must now look for a way of re-indigenizing, of recreating an identity that is purely indigenous to them, and see how that can become a bargaining chip.
Which it's a huge responsibility.
It's a big one,
because they have to change their monetary term or their monetary value. They have to almost change possibly their language.
So, for example,
and develop or adopt another formal means of communication,
whatever it will be,
it will be.
Yes.
And then something also developed after the situation with Gabon. In fact, Paul Biya of Cameroon moved to reshuffle his Minister of Defense cabinet and generals, and that of Paul Kagame of Rwanda too is doing the same. And a couple of Nigerians are saying they're awaiting Equatorial Guinea, and then just like other African countries that have had long-serving presidents from possibly 45, 44, 38 years, you've had long-serving presidents in most of these countries. They're beginning to see that the military has a strong force and the people are awakening. So a couple of persons are saying they're not surprised with the cabinet reshuffle.
I fear for Cameroon.
You do?
I have my suspicions about Cameroon.
But there's been a large retirement of cabinet members.
No. Let's understand something, Esther. Traditionally, coup plotters are not even senior officers. Coups are often plotted by middle officers. 1. Number 2, if you see senior officers staging which they can do, it is usually the exception, not the norm. Okay. But the fact is that it is middle officers that normally stage coup. Now, these coups that are taking place, we need to understand. I have no business getting to know the details of the planning.
All right.
The thing is, who is the person that is strengthening the coupists from staging these coups?
Cool.
That's the most important thing. Those are people that watch the chessboard and understand we have to move the pawn now, we have to move the castle then, we have to move the king, we have to move the queen, we have to move the knight. Those are, so because I think these people have taken all of these things into consideration. Esther,
Yeah.
there's a whole lot about Nigeria that Nigerians don't even know, but outsiders know.
That's true.
So when, I mean, with these realities in place, do you know who is who? What makes you think that in Ghana somebody staged a coup from prison? So what's the big deal about retiring people? No matter your, as far as they are working on the face of they can plan anything from anywhere and do whatever
they want to do.
All what they need to do is to send and receive signals, and that's it. So what they must do, in reshuffle cabinet, that's personal to you, but make your country work. Paul Biya has been president since 1982. What has Cameroon's
Gotten.
Paul Biya is by far more vicious
than
Mugabe, than 10 about Mugabe's. You don't ever get to hear about him, but read up on Paul Biya and you'll be amazed about. Paul Biya once said that all he needs to do is to just move his finger like this. That's what he said. All he needs to do is to move his finger like this.
And they've been able to psychologically suppress their people.
What are you saying? So this is the thing. There's no need to. Paul Biya was vice president to Ahmed Hijo. Ahmed Hijo was not sick. He was ill and hearty. They told him he was sick. He needed to resign. He
They
resigned.
told him he was sick.
He was sick. He needed to resign. In Upper Volta, that later became Burkina Faso. In Upper Volta, Thomas Sankara, came to power at the age of 26. Was beginning to turn things around for his country.
In a positive way, actually.
Burkina Faso meant land of upright people. He changed. He said, "What does Upper Volta mean?" He changed to Burkina Faso, which was more of an indigenous name.
The military junta of Burkina Faso actually is adopting the method of Thomas Sankara.
Then they said, then some people, I don't know, his best friend, Blaise Compaoré, a friend who lived with him in the same house, whom his parents took like their own son, woke up one morning and staged a coup against him. In fact, he staged that coup within weeks or days of Thomas Sankara saying that the only person that can do me evil is Blaise Compaoré. If Compaoré moves against me, I'll be helpless. And surely Blaise Compaoré moved against him.
And that's what happened.
And so do you know, before the French Revolution, the Burkinabe Revolution that pushed Blaise Compaoré out of office, the French president wrote to him, said, "Dear Blaise," wrote to him on first name basis. He said, "Dear Blaise, you may need to reconsider continuing staying in power." Blaise Compaoré refused. Esther, the point I'm making this morning is very simple. I fear for Cameroon, but the reality is we must begin to make democracy work. Until that happens, you can expect the unexpected.
All right, let's move to the Nation newspaper. Of course, all the national dailies this morning actually has a situation with Gabon. So the major headline of the Nation newspaper is Tinubu, world leaders, UN, AU, EU reject Gabon junta. Of course, it's expected. We have above that major headline, Fashion displeased with Adibanjo over Afenifere. You see that on page 10 of the Nation newspaper. Osun APC expels 3 ex-Aregbeshola's men, 81 others. You see that on page 6. Also, Wike, I will deliver Abuja Metro Line next year. That's on page 3. Protests in Ondo, Cross River over NDDC board. That's on page 29. And we also have on the bottom page there, Obaseki free to fix federal roads in Edo, says Minister. NSIA stakeholders partner in improved cancer treatment. These are the major headlines on the Nation newspaper. So let's look at Osun State, briefly. And whereby the APC expelling 3 of ex-Aregbeshola's men, 81 others. What's going on?
No. I think it's some kind of house cleaning. Of course, it's house cleaning. It's not news that the president and his former, a man that was widely thought to be his heir apparent to the Tinubu political dynasty, he's fallen apart with him, and so it's only not surprising. Governor Yetola, who was governor, who had the initial issues with Aregbeshola, his predecessor. Yetola is now minister, so he's in a place to wield political power, and so he can now begin to move on the party and try to clean the party up. I won't be surprised if he comes to challenge for the governorship in the next election cycle, or in the one following this one, in the one following the next. So, of course, party supremacy. People don't want to share power. In a democracy, people, a democracy ought to be a place where people, all shares of opinion can be heard. People can say their mind. But the case in which all of us want to be in the ruling party, because that outside the ruling party, you won't survive. Now, how can you guys explain people? What was the offense? Is it that they don't share the party ideology, or they don't share the party's values, or what? And having been expelled, it's not suspended, but expelled. That's a very serious thing to do.
That's why I asked what exactly.
That's a very serious thing to do. Can our parties go back to the place where they can build, but even that sounds very funny, where they can build their strength on their on party convention, party culture, party ideology, party philosophy, and party values? Can we go back to that time? Can we have such parties where people can come together because they are like minded, not because if you don't join the APC or PDP, you then it means you're not relevant. So we need to come back to that point. We need to have a democracy in which political parties are proper institutions of culture, and not just places where people want to enter and get power. You're expelling them. I mean, how often do you hear that they've expelled members of Republican or Democratic Party in the US? But somebody is in a party, you are either a party strategist, party mobilizer, party campaign. You must do something. There must be something to bring to the table. You don't just join the party because you want. I mean, it's your way of surviving. Politicians who don't have any other thing to do, as volatile as politics is, you may win, you may lose, and yet they have no other second work. All what they do is that they're politicians. Why wouldn't your country be in trouble? How can you and I are broadcasters, we're journalists. You could go into politics. If you didn't win, you come back to what you were doing before.
Sure.
People who don't have any other work to do, the only work they do is that they are politicians. Goodness, come on.
All right, so
really?
let's go to the Daily Trust. The Daily Trust there has as a major headline, Gabon coup, contagious autocracy spreading in Africa. And that statement was made by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Europe warns Nigerian military against emulating Gabonese army. And why we overthrew Bongo, the coupists have eventually been able to explain themselves. Coup deeply concerning. Commonwealth, make noise. I have been arrested. Bongo begs friends for help. Gabonese celebrate fall of Bongo's 53-year dynasty. Wow, the same thing that transpired in Niger.
See, Esther, let me just cut in before we. If ECOWAS is serious about this coup matter, rally troops and enter Gabon.
But Gabon is part of Central Africa, so it's supposed to be economic community of Central African states.
Their business.
So for now, ECOWAS may not do the needful with Gabon unless the economic community of Central African states decide to do something.
The AU, wake up and do something.
I think they've been so complacent
lately. Wake up and do something. Something must be. Sanctions don't work. Sanctions don't work. Do you see something happening where all these countries that the junta is now in control having a bilateral agreement of forming a committee, just like you have ECOWAS, African Union. So they form their own committee where they know they're very poor and they have no other option but to rely on themselves. Do you see that forge, that unison or synergy coming in play now? Why wouldn't it come in play? They don't have, even without formalizing it. No, see, the thing is, it's already existing. It's multilateral, but they've not come out to call it a name, which I don't see them doing anyway. Because you can only keep a military junta for so long. They can't be there forever. It's not possible. Even they know. That's why you see in Niger, the biggest bargaining chip is that they hand power over in 3 years, and they've said you can't do it in 3 years. So everybody comes out, even Mali, they've all come to say we'll hand power back,
including Sudan,
because they understand the imperative of But Esther, except you match force with force, expect more coups. I hope they won't wake up too late when they think that. I told you that they are rewriting the cartography. Africans are not the ones causing these coups. African militaries are not the ones doing this work. Somebody somewhere is in some capital is sitting down to strategically. That's why I said the chessboard is in Africa, but the players are not in Africa. They are not Africans.
Because you wonder why did usurpation
and they were very strategic. They were careful. They waited until as soon as the election result was announced. They knew that people knew that the man didn't win the election. As soon as the announcement came, they just moved in within minutes.
But Cyril, was it not expected? How do you cut off internet access? How do you say international observers should not observe the elections because you feel it's going to pose a risk of influence on how the result will turn out? How do you not how do you disenfranchise a couple of people from the opposition?
No.
But that was basically what transpired. Election materials did not arrive at some polling units that were considered the polling units of the opposition. You also delayed in announcing results. You woke up very early in the morning. A couple of persons have almost compared it with how the elections was conducted, where INEC very early in the morning announced President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the president. The same thing too transpired in Gabon. When you see all the symmetrics in place and the people are wallowing in abject poverty, there's multilateral poverty in that country, in these countries actually, and they're in an arid nation. They're in sub-Saharan Africa, a very dry area, and there is no hope. Then you psychologically chain them where they think that the only paradise they can have is in their country and is based on what the president gives them. Are you not respecting this usurpation to take place?
Let me well, I'm glad you've made this long explanation. Let me even come in. In the unique case that Gabon is, please, this election matter was just an opportune moment for the military to strike. That one man ruled Gabon from 1964 or so to 2009. His son took over from 2009 up until now. One family, 53 years is enough. Is enough. All the things that happened during the election, they are not new. Except that now somebody wanted to move against the president and waited for the right time to strike. But that the mere fact that your father was president 1960 whatever to 2009, and you took over as president from 2009 up until now is enough. Look at Togo. The same thing has happened in Togo has happened in Cameroon. In Togo, now Singba Yadam was president 1965 to 2000, 1963 or so to 2005. 30-something years. He was president for life. As soon as he died, the soldiers took his son and installed him president. Without election, they just made him president. And they said, is this democracy now or military rule? They now said, okay, he remained president, then conducted elections. Till today, Eyadema's son is the president of Togo. That in itself is enough. So the fact that we've refeudalized, rebrotherized, renepoticized, and turned government into a government of the father, son, and grandson. What more are you to expect?
All right, Cyril. Let's quickly take other national dailies. We have above the major headline on the Daily Trust where the Nigerian flag designer Michael Akinwumi dies at age 87.
Yeah.
We'll say we pray that God gives repose to the family.
Akinwumi, right?
No, Akinwumi, yes. Partaiwo Akinwumi, yes, that's true. Thank you very much for that.
You know, I think the one he actually did had the sun on the white band.
On the white band, okay.
You know, they are vertical bands, right? Yeah, the vertical bands. Green, white, green. I think the one he originally did had the sun in the middle to say, well, land of the rising sun. But somehow it was taken away. So we had the green white, green. He was in Ibadan. I remember that almost every year we would celebrate him, and then there was a particular time President Goodluck Jonathan said they should put him on salary or whatever for life, forever until he died or something. I hope that our country will learn to celebrate our heroes when they are alive, not when they are dead. I think Michael Odiase, who wrote who composed the new national anthem from Edo State, and then Professor, I can't pick her name, but the Nigerian professor, she was a woman. Her children went to Ghana for holidays also. They came back and told her that in Ghana, after they sing the national anthem, they normally read a pledge. So she said, okay, pledge. They said, Mommy, write a pledge. Right? So she took a pen and wrote some lines. Her husband then was a friend of military president, military head of state, Obasanjo. So the husband took it to Obasanjo. Obasanjo took it and said, so the man told Obasanjo, said, after the anthem, there should be a pledge. Obasanjo looked at it and said, wow, this is beautiful. He took his pen and crossed the line where the national pledge now stopped. It was longer than that.
Okay.
So he just took and said, by decree, this is the pledge. That was
And it
how
became
it became. I think that woman died in 2018 or so.
Oh.
So we need to learn to celebrate our
Celebrate
heroes.
our heroes. I made landmarks in the country. Okay, so we also have brain drain. Nigerian doctors earn $4,000 as wages in Gambia, Sierra Leone, CMDs. All right, we also have reps fume as agencies spent 81 billion naira to plant 21 million trees in the north. And of course, bottom page, we have 3 months after websites of FCTA, Education, Justice retain Bello, Adamu Malami as ministers. Okay, Naira continues free fall as NNPC Afrexim $3 billion loan deal drags. Man also arrested for hacking 100-year-old father to death over 70,000 naira. Okay, no, that's not a good one. Monthly revenue from Abuja Kaduna train service drops from 500 million naira to 1 million naira. That's from the National Railway Commission. Okay, I think those are the national dailies that we can take this morning because we need to delve as quick as possible into the next segment of VOP this morning. Cyril Abako, thank you for staying with us and, extemporating things as broad as we can. Yeah. As usual, we have a lot to learn and the conversation still continues. Up next on VOP this morning, yet another coup in Africa, but Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is hopeful he will collaborate with the African Union to decide what to do next. Let's talk about that in a bit.